Clinton's foreign policy experience is pretty much confined to having had breakfast once at the International House of Pancakes.
I hear these guys wringing their hands about everything being wrong with this country. I'm sorry, I just am all depressed. I want to switch over to see Jake and the Fat Man on CBS.
President Washington began this tradition in 1790 after reminding the nation that the destiny of self-government and the preservation of the sacred fire of liberty is finally staked on the experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people. For our friends in the press who place a high premium on accuracy, let me say, I did not actually hear George Washington say that.
It is, as you can imagine, a great pleasure for me to be here in this beautiful ballroom before this magnificent assembly on an evening when all thought of politics is banished and I can concentrate on what I do best, comedy.
I like photographers. You don't ask questions.
But self-control in this business is important, as I think all of you know. When you're sitting in your tank, and the gun sights are trained right on Sam Donaldson, believe me, self-control is important.
Can you imagine Sam Donaldson with a camera? As most of you would say, the thought makes me shudder. Somebody asked me one day why we didn't put a stop to Sam shouting out questions at us when we're out on the South Lawn. We can't. If we did, the starlings would come back.
Then there are some jokes that are not meant to be heard, like the one Reagan told while doing a sound check before his weekly radio address.
I'm pleased to tell you today that I've signed legislation that will outlaw Russia forever. We begin bombing in 5 minutes.
I remember that as being quite humorous at the time because he didn't realize he was being broadcast.
But Reagan did not learn his lesson about sound checks.
He plainly wants to do it all over again in the worst way.
Fellow Americans, I've talked to you on a number of occasions about the economic problems and opportunities our nation faces. And I'm prepared to tell you it's a hell of a mess. We aren't connected to the press room yet, are we?
The funniest thing I ever saw was the day a congressman held a news conference who had been caught in the Abscam scandal to explain that the reason that he had stuffed the money into the glove compartment of his car was that, well, he couldn't put it in his ear.
That is great.
Well, it was you know, you hear the old joke about the congressman admitted taking the money but not any wrongdoing. It happened.
It did happen.
It happened.
It's not a fluke.
I mean, I was so excited that night I was so excited I couldn't believe it.
Talk about politicians poking fun at themselves. Remember back in 1995 when comedian Chris Farley came to Congress dressed up as then Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, right in front of the real Newt Gingrich.
All right, and finally, H.R. 631, motion to make Sonny Bono come up here and sing I've Got You News. All in favor? All right, we did it! But, Mr. Speaker, I've been assigned a very important duty, administrating to you a new speaker's oath. So if you please put your hand on the Diet Coke and repeat after me. I, Newt Gingrich.
I, Newt Gingrich.
Do solemnly promise to continue to be a good speaker.
Do solemnly promise to continue to be a good speaker.
I promise to help the American people.
I promise to help the American people.
I promise to smile when people call me Landslide.
I promise to smile when people call me Landslide.
I promise not to kill Big Bird.
I promise not to kill Big Bird.
I promise that my book will be way less boring than Al Gore's book.
You did it!
One time I flew back to Mesa, Arizona. Cindy and I went to this dinner. I stood up and I said, I want to thank Chris and Doug and Chris for this wonderful dinner. Doug and Chris are two of our closest friends. We love Doug and Chris. I sat down, the lady next to me said, you know, Doug and Chris have been divorced for the last 3 years.
There is no place in the world that anybody ever had a head of state play the piano while they sang a song. Would you? Anything you play, I know. Mr. President, Mr. President, wait a minute. Mr. President, may I ask you? Mr. President, may I say one thing? I wanted to sing a song. I don't want to ride a horse.
Nixon now. Nixon now, more than ever. Nixon now, more than ever. More than ever, we need Nixon now. Nixon now, more than ever. Nixon now, more than ever. More than ever, we need Nixon now. Nixon now, more than ever. Nixon now, more than ever. More than ever, we need Nixon now. Nixon now, more than ever. Nixon now, more than ever. More than ever, we need Nixon now.
And now, in his name.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this study of the silly side of statesmanship. And remember one thing, if you ever decide to run for president, we'll be watching. Sometimes safer to go with a quote from a famous author like Albert Camus. Shut up. We're all rooting for Rudy because we want him to make the White House. What?
Blooper!
Can you see my crotch? I mean the paper, basically. But afraid to, I hate myself. I hate everything about myself. Okay, here we go. Everybody seems to love bloopers. So you guys have to yell bloopers. Oh, God help me. Of course, Bush could use some help with it. I'm literally losing my mind. Here we go. Remember the old sports adage? I don't remember. What else is burned into your memory?
Oh, bright things. The way people laugh when they see me in this outfit.
Yeah? Maybe your memory is just burned. Bill Clinton. Has he ever done a blooper? A screw up?
I think so. I think so.
And kind of a big one.
It's a big blooper, I think, you know.
Got a bad knee. I hate my life. This is the best tape I've ever seen.